We are about to embark on a long journey to Ford Takeover in Jackson, Tennessee. Now, although I'm not driving my car, we will be taking the Carbon Fox this year, and it concerns me with a few of the issues that it has. What can we get away with and what can't we get away with as far as issues go with the car? And today I want to talk about that because I think this topic is something that a lot of you guys really need to hear. So as stated, I won't be driving this car for 7 hours. I'm going to be pulling it on a trailer. But some of you will be driving your car. So what I want to touch on are some of the things that you can get away with on your car and some of the things that absolutely cannot be overlooked. Now, some of you already know all this stuff and you're thinking, man, do we really need to make a video about it? I don't know. I think so, because to some people, an oil pan gasket leak or a rear main seal or something like that is just devastating, right? The car needs to be parked or it needs to be taken to a shop. So let's talk about a few different things, what matters and what doesn't. Basically what this is going to be is kind of like my checklist of the car that I'm going through right now. I've actually not done anything to the car yet as far as checking anything. There is at least one thing that we absolutely need to fix before we go, and I will get into that in a second. All right, so first off, we have a leak here that I just picked up today. As you can see down on the floor here, that blue liquid is actually methanol. So up here, I have a leak in my canister, and I think this is due to the fact that I had a crimped boost line up there coming off of this. So when the car created boost, it expanded and it didn't have anywhere to go. So I think it actually bulged out my tank here. So with my methanol tank up here leaking, I have to ask myself, okay, how important is that? Well, for me, I'm not gonna be racing the car while I'm up there. It's not gonna be on the dyno or anything like that. So I can just simply drain this tank and we can proceed, because I don't really need the meth on this car. So that's not a concern of mine at the moment, but if I choose to and I have time, then we'll fix it. But we have another issue over here, so let's talk about that. As you can see right here, we have some drippage. Now, I'm not 100% sure where this is coming from, but I do want to tell you guys that in a previous video, I mentioned that we had a leaking valve cover. Since then, I have fixed the leaking valve cover, so I know that that's not the issue. So this could be residual oil because the car's really not been driven. So all this time, this car's been dripping oil down here, and that very well just could be some residual. So what we need to do to verify that is come up here with a flashlight and look. I don't see right up there on that header bolt. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but there's oil right there. Now the valve cover gasket itself is clean. I can see it from here. The gasket is not leaking, but I do see a little bit of oil on the very edge of the valve cover. And I think I know where that's coming from. So given the information that we have, what do we need to do here? If this was it, this was the only spot that we were leaking, I probably wouldn't even worry about that. I mean, it drips maybe 2 drips every few hours or so, okay? So if that, honestly. The drip that was up there on the header bolt has got to be fixed. Why is that? Why does that have to be fixed and that doesn't? Well, for obvious reasons. This is just gonna drip on the pavement, right? That up there is gonna drip onto the hot, extremely hot header. That could cause a fire. So in a few minutes, we'll go ahead and lower the car down and I'll show you where I think that that's leaking from, and it's something that we absolutely can address. This was actually my fault as to why this thing's leaking. But I wanna get back to a leaking oil pan. Now we are going to Ford Takeover, right? For me, it doesn't matter that this thing is dripping a little bit, but for any of you guys that are gonna be on the racetrack wanting to race your car, guess what you can't have? Any oil leaks. Now, a drip or two typically will not shut you down on a track, but I mean, it's got to be minuscule, right? But if your car is leaking oil, the best thing to do is keep it off the track. I wouldn't put my car on the track until I knew that this was stopped, okay? So my rear end seeps a little bit of gear oil right here. I've never seen any on the ground, but it does seep a little bit. Is that a concern? No. As long as this thing has got fluid in it, which I know it's got gear oil in it, as long as it's got some in it, we're good to go, okay? I would still feel safe driving this car 7 hours with a wet gasket, if you will, around the rear end. So even this right here, if I was gonna drive this car 7 hours and this was all it had, right? And let's just say it was a rear main seal leaking, I'd still feel comfortable driving this car 6 or 7 hours with just that. Now, any more than that, it might concern me. But guys, here's what I want you to know. just a drip or two is not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that your engine needs to go be completely overhauled. So believe it or not, that's how I bought the Retro Fox, was because the guy said that I bought this car for like $4,000. And the guy I bought it from said, yeah, pretty much the engine needs to be rebuilt. I'm like, oh shit, I started it up. It didn't sound the best. Got the car home. It's leaking from everywhere. It's leaking so bad that it's smoking going down the road because it's dripping on the exhaust, right? I get home, come to find out it just has leaking valve covers, and I think the lower intake gasket was leaking as well. Sealed all that up, nothing wrong with the car. Bumped the timing up on it, did a base idle reset, and this thing ran like a top. And since then I've had the heads off of it, and the cylinder walls and everything look great. The oil always looks good. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to think just because your car has a bunch of oil leaks all over it, it doesn't mean that the engine is bad. And here I can prove this. The Carbon Fox is a fresh rebuild. I should be ashamed, really, but I'm not. The Carbon Fox is a fresh rebuild, but it just leaks all over the damn place. I don't know what the deal is. It always has. So it is what it is. That doesn't mean that the engine's bad. This engine is super tight in this car, but it just has leaks, right? All right, so enough of that. Something else I want to remind you guys of is rattles and vibrations and things like that. Those obviously don't really matter. I mean, you can leave them. That's more of a nuisance. But for some of you, if you're going to be taking a really long drive, you know, 3, 4, 5, 7 hour trip, 10 hours for some of you, 10 hours plus, you don't want any big rattles or anything like that. So I would go ahead and try to address those, even if it comes down to shoving like folded up pieces of paper behind like your bezel or something like that to keep this thing from rattling. Don't drive 6, 7 hours with something like that rattling, and it's just, trust me, it's going to be a nightmare. So, you know, you might want to address things like that because you want to be comfortable in the car. Now, I want to talk about rear end noises and stuff and engine noises. So if you are hearing a noise that you're maybe not familiar with, that sounds like it could be the bottom end maybe knocking some, but you're not quite sure, maybe it's just a rocker arm or whatever, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, that's where I stop. That's where I don't risk it anymore. I either find the problem and verify that maybe it's just a lifter or something like that, which still probably needs to be fixed, or either we don't take the car. Now that can get you in a lot of trouble. Engine noises are something that you really need to know and diagnose before you go off on a long trip or something like that. Now, I also want to talk about the fact that some of you guys just may be getting a car, or it's been in storage, you've not driven it in years, and you're getting this thing out for the first time, and you're running into a couple of these issues like we're talking about. For you guys that are just going to be driving it a mile or two up the road, maybe to your friend's house or to a store or something like that, I say kind of go for it, right? Test the car out and let's just see what it can do. Bad things can happen a mile away from your house, but you're a lot less likely to have those bad things if you're just kind of easing the car around. So that would be a good test for the car, is to get it out, get it hot, drive it up and down the road a few times. But you know, if you're going, this is mainly geared toward people who are going on long trips and haven't probably driven the car in a while, or made some major changes, or you just bought it. That's what this video is. I would not drive a car if it's leaking any type of water. I wouldn't risk that. You know, something like this is different. That's not part of the cooling system. Well, I guess it kind of is, but look right here. We've got some moisture right here that's been building up for a pretty good while. That needs to be addressed, and it's coming from the power steering. That really needs to be addressed, but guys, it's been like that forever and it really never drips. Remember, I'm not driving my car 7 hours, I'm pulling it. So once we get there, this thing's only gonna be on the road for probably 30 minutes at a time. So I feel pretty confident that, you know, whatever little issues it has right now, we'll be fine. So something else I wanna just mention is headlights, taillights, brake lights, blinkers, all that stuff. Guys, that's got to be functioning. Don't attempt to drive one of these cars if that stuff is not working. I know there's somebody going to be in the comment section right now like, really, guy? I mean, you're just struggling for content here. Why would you put something like this out? Why? Because I see people on the road all the time driving these cars without brake lights, without reverse lights and things like that. If you get in a wreck and some of these things don't work and it gets tested, it gets looked at, and it's going to be on you, right? So let's go under the hood, and I want to talk about an issue that just arose on this car not too long ago. So I had a battery light come on my car, and for no reason. It was still charging, everything looked fine. This car does have a 3G alternator upgrade, but I was a little concerned about it, and I feel like something needs to be tested, right? The battery needs to be checked, and also the alternator. Well, I don't know if you guys know it or not, but today's my birthday, and Papa T has hooked me up with something. Check it out. Bam. Perfect timing for something like this, because like I said, I got basically a charging warning show up on the car, and everything looked good. I'm thinking, damn, you know, what is it? Is it the alternator? Is it the battery? Whatever. These are expensive. I'm not gonna lie to you. They're expensive. They're not something you can just run out for, you know, 50, 60 bucks and buy. But if you can get your hands on something like this, or either go by, you know, your local O'Reilly, AutoZone, whatever you've got, if you can run by there, they can test your battery. Do a load test if you're not sure and you have issues like that popping up. This can also test alternators, regulators, and starters. I don't know how to do starters. I haven't read the manual yet, but I have tested my battery, and my battery is good on the car. So that's a good thing, right? So now I know I put a load on this thing, I checked it, battery's good, so now I feel safe to go off. What you don't want to do is go off on a battery that won't hold a charge, because then you're going to be in a mess somewhere, right? So do a load test on your battery if you're concerned about it. If you know your stuff's good, don't worry about it, guys. Just go on. But for me, I was a little concerned. We checked it, everything's good. All right, so getting over here to where this leak is coming from, let me show you guys. Guys, I never really do this, but I just real quick like want to mention, you want a badass light, you want something, you work on cars, check this out. 1, 2, 3, you got side lights on this thing. I use this all the time. Look at that, lights up everything perfectly. Also, check it out, it's magnetic. Any which way you want to put this thing, right? You can clip it on your hat. This thing is extremely bright. It's like 750 lumens. It goes right in your pocket. It's also got UV. So this is really great for you guys that are looking for some type of leak. If you have dye in your AC line and you're looking for a leak, this right here will tell you. So anyway, just something I carry in my pocket. I get these off Amazon. I'll put a link down there, an affiliate link down below if you are interested. I recommend anybody and everybody that works on cars or whatever get one of these. So something I do outside at night sometimes is this. I'll just hang it right here on my collar, and then I can see all around me and everything else. So anyway, sorry, I just had to. I use this thing all the time, and I figured I'd show you guys. This fitting, I cross-threaded the damn thing up here, and I thought it was tight, but I was like, oh, you know, seems kind of normal, and then it got really tight. So that is where our oil is dripping from. It's actually running down the side here, running down the valve cover, and that's what's getting on top of the header bolt, which is dangerous. That's a really hot spot right there. I will go ahead and give you guys another tip, another pointer. You need to take a TFI module with you, especially if you're going to be driving this thing long distances. Always have an extra TFI module, even if it's one of those cheap ones from the auto parts store. Most of the time I would recommend you get a Motorcraft one, but at the same time you got to get what you can get your hands on. So keep an extra TFI module, because when these things get hot, sometimes they just quit. Something else that I want to remind you guys of that I'm thinking of that's very important and is often overlooked is front end alignment. This car needs a front end alignment, but I'm not concerned about it because I'm not actually driving the car. There again, we'll be unloading it once we get there, and I think the furthest trip we're going to take is about 25-30 miles, right? So not a big deal. The front end's not too bad out of alignment, but it does need to happen. It doesn't take that long to absolutely destroy a set of tires and have a blowout with one of these. I have seen it happen in a very short period. So make sure that your front end is lined up on your car. Don't even guess, just go get it done if you can. So let's talk about checklist stuff. Obviously, I'm going to check my oil. If it needs to be changed or anything added to it, then we'll do that. I will also check my fuel pressure before we go, because fuel pressure can change on you from time to time. It just can. Things can loosen up and whatnot, and you don't want to be on the road and your fuel pressure go to shit and stuff like that. Also, vacuum lines are extremely important to go through and check. So you want to make sure none of your vacuum lines are rotted. If they are, just go ahead and replace them real quick. It's not the end of the world. Get that done, because if you have a vacuum leak on your car while you're driving, that could be ugly. So we don't want those type problems, and especially go into your regulator. And you boosted guys, you absolutely have to make sure that that line, that boost reference, is in good shape. Because if you don't have that and that thing comes off, you have no more boost reference, and your car will no longer add fuel per pound of boost. You will burn it up. So it's just that plain and simple, guys. Always check that boost reference line if you have a boosted car, like right here. Check that thing, make sure it's not crimped, make sure it's doing what it needs to do, and you'll be good to go. Now, cooling system on the car, That is something that has to be working properly. Do not hit the road with a car that's hit or miss on the cooling system. Just don't do it. Guys, I know it's aggravating. I know, and I know it's so tempting to get one of these cars out and you're like, okay, well, it kind of does good on a cool day, or if I'm just driving. Listen to me, you can get in bumper to bumper traffic with these things, and if it has an issue with the cooling system, you're going to be sitting there beside the road and not only just waiting for it to cool down or add more water, you could pop a head gasket, completely destroy the motor, whatever the case may be. So there's certain things you cannot live with. That's one of them right there. Cooling system. It's got to be right, guys. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be right. You got to be able to trust this thing. It has not run as cool as I thought it should, but it's also not like overheated necessarily. But I think on a 7-hour trip, I don't know, man. I don't know. Now, this car has recently had a brake problem, but we have the brakes working pretty good right now. The only thing is we don't have a lot of vacuum, and that's due to the camshaft that we've got. If you don't know, we have a new camshaft over here, a B31, that we will be installing in the car. Right now, it has an N51 HR in it, so not a lot of vacuum. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is this car still has decent brakes. So I would feel comfortable on a 7-hour trip with this car and the brakes that it has. Now, depending on where I'm going, if I'm going to be going through Dallas or something like that, and it's bumper to bumper traffic, and no, I probably wouldn't. I would probably go ahead and change that cam out before I ever went on a road trip like that, or either just not take this car. The main purpose of this video, I guess, is to let you guys know that an oil leak, an oil drip is not the end of the world. It's okay. But the longer the trip, the more this car needs to be correct. Don't feel like your car has got to go to a shop and be completely leak free, or your tune is just not quite right. It's okay. That's another topic as well. Maybe your tune is not perfect. Maybe this thing wants to kind of die every once in a while when you go to put it in reverse, or you go to take off from a stop sign. Things like that. It's fine. You and everybody else has that issue. It's not just you, so don't feel like you're alone in the world. Some of the best cars out there will have issues from time to time. Anyway, guys, that's kind of my checklist. I hope to see you guys at Ford Takeover. This video should go out Monday. So, guys, hit me up. Let me know down below. Are you going to Ford Takeover? And if so, hope to see you there. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. As always, thanks for watching.